The facility wasn't supposed to exist. At least, that's what the official record said. Buried beneath miles of desert rock, Station Epsilon 9 had no designation in any public database, no oversight committee, and no visitors. It was a place where humanity stored things it didn't understand and wasn't ready to face. Dr. Elias Varn had been working there for 6 years. 6 long, silent years. At first, the job fascinated him. Unknown alien artifacts, strange biological specimens, objects that defied physics. But over time, the wonder faded, replaced by a suffocating routine of logging, monitoring, and never, under any circumstances, interfering. That rule was repeated constantly. Observe. Do not engage. And Elias had followed it. Until the day he didn't. The pod. It arrived without warning. No transport logs. No explanation. One morning, Elias entered Lab Sector 3 and found it waiting in the center of the chamber. A metallic pod, smooth and seamless, about 2 meters tall. It hadn't been there the night before. Who authorized this? Elias asked over the comms. Static answered him. He circled the object slowly. The surface wasn't reflective, yet it seemed to shimmer faintly, like heat distortion over asphalt. Strange markings wrapped around it, symbols that felt almost alive. His tablet beeped. Designation unknown. Origin unknown. Instructions. Observe only. Elias frowned. That's it? No containment protocol? Nothing. No response. No instructions. No warning. Just silence. The sound. The first time he heard it, he thought it was a malfunction. A faint tapping. Like fingers brushing against glass. Elias froze. The sound came from inside the pod. He leaned closer, heart pounding. Tap. 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 It wasn't random. It was rhythmic. Deliberate. Something was inside. Protocol. Elias stepped back immediately. He knew the rules. Unknown containment units were never to be opened without full authorization. There could be pathogens, hostile organisms, reality-distorting entities, things that could wipe out entire colonies. He reported it. Possible internal activity, he said into the comms. Requesting guidance. Static. Then a delayed response. Maintain observation. Do not engage. Of course. That was always the answer. The second day, the tapping continued. But it changed. It became faster. Urgent. Desperate. Elias couldn't ignore it anymore. He set up additional sensors, thermal scans, acoustic mapping, electromagnetic readings. Nothing. No heat signature. No movement. No biological indicators. According to every instrument, the pod was empty. But the tapping didn't stop. The voice. On the third day, everything changed. Elias had just entered the lab when he heard it. A whisper. Soft. Faint. Help. He froze. His breath caught in his throat. Who's there? He said instinctively. Silence. Then again. Please. Elias turned slowly toward the pod. His heart pounded violently now. That's not possible, he muttered. He activated the internal audio filters, amplifying the sound. The voice became clearer. I can't breathe. Elias staggered back. Every protocol screamed at him to leave, to seal the chamber, to call for containment. But something else, something deeply human, kept him rooted in place. Who are you? He asked, voice trembling. A pause. Then, I don't know. The decision. Elias didn't sleep that night. He replayed the audio over and over. It wasn't artificial. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded real. Afraid. He submitted multiple urgent requests for authorization. All denied. Maintain observation. That was all they ever said. By the fourth day, the voice had grown weaker. It's dark. Please don't leave me. Elias clenched his fists. They're letting you die, he whispered. His eyes drifted to the emergency override panel. Opening the pod would violate every rule. It could cost him his career, his freedom, possibly his life. Or worse, everyone's life. He hesitated for a long time. Then he made the mistake that would change everything. He reached out and pressed the override. The opening. The pod reacted instantly. A low hum vibrated through the room. The symbols on its surface began to glow. Elias stumbled back as the air around the pod distorted violently. Containment breach, the system blared. Too late. The pod split open with a sharp hiss. Inside, there was nothing. Empty space. Elias blinked. No, that's not. The temperature dropped suddenly. A wave of cold swept across the room. And then, something moved. Not inside the pod. Behind him, the entity. Elias turned slowly. At first, he saw nothing. Then the air itself began to ripple. A shape emerged, tall, shifting, barely visible, like a shadow that refused to settle into one form. It didn't have eyes, but Elias felt it looking at him. You opened it, the voice whispered. But now it wasn't coming from the pod. It was everywhere. I thought you were trapped, Elias stammered. A pause. Then something like amusement. The room lights flickered. Now I'm not. The truth. Elias backed away, heart racing. What are you? The entity tilted, its form bending unnaturally. I don't remember. That's not possible. You wouldn't remember either, after that long. Elias swallowed hard. After what? The entity drifted closer. The air grew colder. After being forgotten? Something about those words sent a chill through him deeper than the cold. You were contained for a reason, Elias said. You could be dangerous. A pause. Then, so could you. The shift. Suddenly, alarms blared across the facility. Critical breach detected. Initiating lockdown. Heavy doors slammed shut across sectors. Red lights flooded the corridors. Elias turned toward the exit. We need to contain you, he said urgently. Before they erase me again? The entity whispered. Elias hesitated. I don't know what they'll do. The entity's form flickered. I do. The walls began to distort. Metal bent slightly, like soft clay. They always erase what they don't understand. The power. Elias watched in horror as the entity reached toward a nearby console. It didn't touch it, but the console warped, twisted, then collapsed into itself like crushed paper. That's not possible, Elias whispered. The entity turned toward him. You opened the door. Now the door is open. What does that mean? A pause. Then, not just for me. Elias felt a sudden pressure in his head. Images flashed through his mind. Endless darkness. Voices. Hundreds of them. All whispering. All waiting. No, he gasped. Yes, the entity replied softly. The realization. Elias staggered back. The pod, it wasn't a prison. It was a barrier. Elias felt his stomach drop. A barrier to what? The entity didn't answer immediately. It simply drifted closer. To everything, the choice. The alarms intensified. Total facility purge in T-minus 10 minutes. Elias turned toward the containment controls. If the facility purged, everything inside would be incinerated, including the entity, including him. We can still fix this, Elias said desperately. I can seal it again. The entity paused. Would you lock me away again? Elias hesitated. I don't know what else to do. A long silence followed. Then, you made a mistake. Elias nodded slowly. Yes. But it wasn't opening the pod. Elias frowned. Then what was it? The entity moved closer. its form almost human now. It was believing you were alone. The ending. The facility began to shake violently. Cracks spread across the walls. Reality itself seemed to bend. Elias fell to his knees. "What happens now?" he asked. The entity hovered above him. For a moment, its shifting form stabilized. And for the first time, Elias saw a face. Not human, but not monstrous either. Just something ancient. Something tired. "Now," it whispered. "Everything wakes up." The walls split open. Darkness poured through. Not empty darkness, but filled with movement. Shapes. Voices. Presence. Elias stared in horror. "How many are there?" The entity looked toward the tearing reality. "We lost count." Elias closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." The entity looked back at him. "So am I." The purge countdown reached 0. A blinding light consumed the facility. For a moment, everything was silent. Epilogue. They never found Station Epsilon 9. Not the ruins. Not the staff. Not even a trace. Only a single report remained, corrupted and incomplete. It contained one final line from Dr. Elias Varn. It wasn't a prison, it was a warning. And somewhere, far beyond human reach, something waited, awake, and no longer alone.